I hope the sound is okay on this one. I am making this video. I've been wanting to make it for a little bit of time. I've got gone back and forth. And this video is going to show you in different parts how to make a nice presentation of a model that you might think, I don't want this one, I want this one, I want this one. This happens to be of a utility company. It's not a regular utility company, it's a mini grid. It's a little village somewhere. And the mini grid has some demand. And right now we're meeting all our demand with diesel, or we cannot meet our demand, or we can put a solar and a battery together in here, and we can see, all right, well, how much if I turn on my calculations, that's okay. What happens if I put a little bit more solar in and use some battery and use it so I don't have to meet my mini grid, or maybe I'll put a little bit of diesel in to get all the power. So don't worry about anything right now. The point is, it's illustrating what you can do. Okay, and you can size it. And then ultimately, you can look at what kind of rate of return you're earning. And this is going to be the target real IRR, and we can change our IRR and see what happens to our price. And this is real after inflation. So, and I'm going to show you how to build this. And I'm going to compare this to other models. And I'm going to use this to demonstrate how we're going to make all this little gimmicks and all that. But I want to demonstrate to you using this model some modeling principles, and I'm going to go through a few details: how to make a little reset button, how to model real the excuse me, the return on invested capital, how to model terminal value, how to model a dispatch of solar and a battery. I've done that in other contexts, but this is a little bit different. Okay, maybe I didn't include the distribution. What happens, and this is a very high price when you start including the distribution. So we can have a very flexible kind of thing. We'll go through some inputs, okay, and talk about colors, talk about demands and everything else. But I just, as an introduction to this video, want to just go through something that's been driving me more and more crazy. I've talked about this before, but please, why in the heck do you have to follow stupid rules? They're really stupid. This is this quote I just have to repeat. We've become excessively bureaucratic planners thanks to Excel, and we can't really handle the knowledge. Here's my history of modeling. 1980s. I used to make Fortran programs, okay, and maybe C++ programs or something. I did. Okay, 1990s came along and we had personal computers and VisiCalc. We had Lotus with one sheet. Aha, Lotus, that was a big deal, but it only had one sheet. The models had to be very simple. This might have been the best period for modeling, where you had to think and you had to simplify your models and you had to really explain things. Then multiple sheets came into Lotus in the 2000s, I think it was, and the models, including mine, was such a big mess. Oh, I could put things in AZ55 and another thing in B1, and they're all over the place. There were no timelines. What a mess. I agree. Okay, and some people started saying, "Oh no, you got to use range names all over the place." I remember that period. Oh, how horrible! Shell Oil said, "Oh, everything has to have a range name." I hope they don't do that anymore. Then came the 2000s, and then people started teaching this stuff, and there were these working sheets, and the models sometimes had a little more structure, but the formulas were long, and you start to have many sheets, and they were difficult to understand. And then the 2020s came. Oh, shoot! Now, why? Oh my God! They have so many different rules and so much structure, and these models become enormous. Nobody can use them anymore. Nobody can understand what we made the model for in the first place. Here's, I just want to tell you that if you think you're a good model because you type fast and you can go blub, 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 right, left, control, left, all that bull crap. If you got some kind of certificate, oh, what a, in some bureaucratic modeling, get rid of it. If you think copy and paste macros, because you could make a copy and paste macro somehow, and please, that's a simple little thing. Don't, that's nothing. And then if you think, oh, I can run to my computer and I could put standby fees on equity, on the committed equity and all that stuff. Oh, what a crap. If you can make creative presentations, if you can use mathematics to solve things, which is in the model I'm going to show, like a PMT function, then you're a little better. If you don't in any single cell in your Excel have a long formula, that I'm impressed by. If you can really effectively model different kind of strategies, whether it's a finance strategy or a operating strategy, that's pretty cool. And it's, remember, we're not making models for an auditor. Now I have to tell you something wonderful. Oh, this was so wonderful. I just have to tell you that before we get into our modeling. And I have to tell you this. I have to frame this somehow. I was working on auditing instead of making the videos, which I like to make. And the auditor says, you had a misspelling mistake. You had a spelling mistake. Okay, I said, well, okay, we run the spell check sometimes. I can press F7. Got to be really careful when you run that spell check that you don't get rid of those range names and all that stuff. And then they spelled the word misspelling wrong. What a gift! Well, these auditors, and they make more money than you probably make when you're making the models. What a gift! Oh, okay. So let's go to this model, okay? And let's start. Let's start with just a little bit of an overview, perhaps, and let's contrast this to another a model. However you present it, if you can focus the presentation and just not make a speedometer graph or something, really get it interactive. And I am absolutely sure that all these things, like I've said before, are illegal. And we can have different places with different demands. And perhaps I'm going to try something right now. No, before I do this, I'm going to tell you what I did to make this model, okay? This could be a model of EDF. It could be a model of whoever, some a utility company. Let's how about Tenaga in Malaysia? How about Meralco in Manila? How about Con Edison in New York? They have to have some demand and supply. Now we're going to look at some other models, and the first thing you should do in understanding modeling, really, this is a very serious point, is understand what you're modeling. And we're going to look at some UNDP model. I took these little demands, and they have little bit of electricity during the day and most at night. And then because of that, the cost of the electricity is much, much higher. That's a ridiculously high cost. It's so sad that it would be so high. We can't really use solar. Maybe solar is stupid to use, and maybe we should get rid of the battery. And maybe if we get rid of the solar and the battery in this case and put a little more diesel in, we're filling this up. And this thing up here is called unserved energy. And I'm going to walk you through that in a second part of the video, not the first part. I hope. Sometimes I say I'm going to make a second part and I never get around to it. I know that. Okay. So what we're going to do is, if you use these things and start changing everything like this, I think you should put a big reset button, and then you can shut people up about, oh, you shouldn't use those little spinner buttons, okay? And we're going to show you how to set up your inputs. That's kind of be the first thing, just to work through a little bit on how to structure these things and do exactly what I've done. And we're going to use a few little range names and make sure that we can reset all of these things and do a sensitivity analysis on what happens if the cost of our technology changed, and almost more importantly, what happens if the lifetime changes, or what if the price of diesel changes? Because what we're really looking at is, first of all, how expensive this thing is going to be to make, and then what different strategies can you employ, and what happens if the cost of batteries and the lifetime of batteries? I've got way too long a life of the batteries here. I was trying to make it look a little better from the standpoint of batteries, and in this case, well, the batteries help. See, we what happened is we put some solar in, and then we replace the solar. So we're going to put range names in, and you can stop. And there's probably no reason to really watch this now. Other people have told me, can you please tell me if you're going to make a video and there's a file associated with the video, can you please tell me where it is? And can you please stick it on your website? Because I forget to do that a lot. So if I if I go to my website, in this one I'll go to energy analysis, and it'll be mini grid, and I'll put it in this one and this one and this one. Okay, all right. I should put up here, I should put some comments about bureaucratic modeling, and maybe I should put this beautiful thing. Maybe I want to do that. Maybe I'll put that right in the front of my website. Okay, that's just all right. So that's where we are. Now, in this video, I'll try to get through it actually pretty quickly, but I'm going to show you a couple of other files and comparative files. Now, so you want to set up the inputs and set up different demand and supply, both demand and supply. We're not making this in this video or this model. If you're modeling a mini grid or Con Ed or Meralco, you're not making a model of a project finance. Or even, I suppose, if you make a little model of some energy efficiency programs, there's something I'm working on with this. He's really wonderful. This man is figuring out all kinds of things to do. Now, there was something good in this UNDP thing. They went through and got 760 hours of solar. Okay? And the only problem with this was, if you have a model, please use the F11 key and kind of, in this case, the solar was basically all exactly the same. And I don't know, maybe you're in the desert someplace right on the equator, and the solar is always similar. And let's put a few more, just F11, why not? Okay, a little bit of variation, but not much. So we've got to evaluate our mini grid, and even though I did a little summary here, that's just one different a day, and we could put a different day. And the solar might change a little bit. It's not really very exciting. If you go to the PV GIS website that I've done too many other times, you could put different solar in, and maybe in my next video I'm going to do it. So the first thing you want to do is work through the solar, and you can get this 8760 straight from a website these days. How wonderful is that? And you can even get the temperature straight from a website. And then you can adjust this for whether you have some tracking or whether you have some tilting. So this is horizontal. I put maybe a little bit more or less. I'm afraid to press this button right now. And then you can get the amount of generation by just multiplying one by the other. I'm doing too much of this. And then you can adjust it by a temperature factor. And I looked at this, and during the middle of the day, we produced less. They had this in this UNDP. That's to arrive at a performance ratio, basically. And then we can get, finally, if we have some capacity here, how much of this capacity are you producing each hour? Okay, that's really what you want. Once you have that, if you're going to be doing one of these models before, this is where modeling, I hope, is a little more interesting. You've got to understand the hydrogen stuff, or whatever. Do we've maybe been doing a little almost too much solar because we want to get straight to the fancy financing, and I agree that's hard, but we want to put different demand profiles in. So I put different demand profiles. I emphasize so many times. Oh, I just look at all these models with an input C and an input S, and in the input C, you have to put things down instead of across. How horrible! You can't use then you can't use the lookup on the entire line. Allow penetration. And now I'm going to get into this discussion just a little bit. That if you have, maybe I already did a little bit, this is not project finance. We replace assets. The difference between corporate finance and project finance, number one, you have a history. Okay, this doesn't have a history. It's a little bit like project finance. Okay. But then once you have assets, you have continuing capital expenditures. So maybe you want to model different rates of penetration. Not everybody is signed up on the very first day. You can look at different, I made one scenario where they're all signed up and others where they're not. And so you can then, then we're going to make, and why not? I never did this before, but it's so stupid for me not to do it. Why don't you just make a dispatch for 1 year? And if you really wanted to do this, you could make a dispatch for the second year and the third year and the fourth year and put different mixes of capacity in, and don't be afraid of this. Just because you're a financial modeler doesn't mean you can't do essentially the same thing. So when we do a dispatch, we run through, and maybe, I'm not going to have to do too much more on this, perhaps because I'm babbling on a lot and I get yelled at. Oh my God. I'm sick of this. People listen to my videos in my house and say, oh, you're just babbling on. All you do is babble on. Well, so what? So we start with the demand. You could call this a corporate model that's demand based. And then we dispatch. And the first thing we do is take off the solar. And we see if we have too much solar. So over here, this is the solar capacity. And you press Control and the square bracket, except in German. And this is so sad that in German you can't do this. You press Control in that one and then F5. And that's really my rule, that if you want to find something, you better press this one and be able to find it really fast, and then F5 and go back. And then on everything else, you better be able to press the F2 function and see exactly where things come from. And we're going to use a few little minimum and maximums, just like we would in a cash flow waterfall. The minimum is we're going to see how much solar we're using for if we're producing solar, how much are we actually using for our load? So we've got the load up here. Look at this, I'm not organized enough. We put the profile during the day and we use a lookup to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 24, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s. And we could even put some randomness and some weekend days that are different. You could really do something a little more sophisticated. What you need, by the way, instead of counting light bulbs in some hypothetical household, you really need some good benchmarking data. I told my friend Celine that. Okay, I hope she, well, I don't know the other name. So we get the total demand, and then we go and put our solar in and see if we have extra solar. Good. We can use that to charge the battery. And when we put the battery capacity in, we're going to use the minimum and maximum almost like a cash sweep. You've got the skills. If you look at some other cash sweep things, we're going to put how much capacity we have, how much storage we have. This is just maximum, and you have to decide, well, what's the hours of storage? And then you can say, okay, this is our maximum storage. How much have we already stored? That's the opening balance. That's just like you would do all sorts of other things with what's the maximum commitment and how much have you already used? And then you got the what's left over, and then eventually we run out of battery capacity. We might have to put more in, and that's why you go to your little first thing, and you say, "Oh no, I'm going to increase a little bit the battery capacity." Okay, and I put a stupid little limit in here, so that was pretty idiotic. So we'll put 300 or something, whatever. It could be more because our solar, we're going to produce a whole bunch of solar that's even bigger than our demand, and we're going to put more capacity, battery capacity in, and when we do that, maybe we can even see how much we don't want to waste our solar. We've got a whole lot of wasted solar. Maybe I got to put a little less solar in and more battery. And we're trying to just make the dispatch work so I'm not wasting the solar and I'm using this green to discharge it. And what you do, and I've done this too much, so I don't want to be repetitive, which I am a little bit, but once we have the amount of battery capacity, we start with the closing balance. The opening balance is equal to the closing balance, and the trick really is that the minimum of the capacity factor is driven by number one, how much do we want to put in the battery or take out of the battery, how much is the capacity of our battery, and how much remaining storage do we have left. So we have to have a little three different things in the minimum. When we discharge our battery, well, we want to take and we want to discharge it not when we have extra solar, but when we have extra load and we want to just discharge it. Now, okay, if you're saying, oh, where's the why can't I remember? Where's the depth of discharge? Where's the cycle efficiency? Where's the efficiency if you're putting some in and taking some out? My God, I'm going senile. Okay, and then we have our closing balance of our battery, and we can see just how much battery we need. And the good thing about this is you can go day by day. When I try to do this, when I don't do it hour by hour, you kind of have to make a hypothetical day and do all of that. Now, if you don't have a battery in here, okay, and again, you turning everything off, and now I'm being a little bit more, I'm going into this a little bit more than I really wanted to, but okay, I can't shut up, I guess. We just put a true and a false here along with the spinner box. It's not a big trick, that. Okay, you can kind of look at that. That's too much to go through, and whatever. And then now, if we have a whole lot of solar, we haven't used the solar for charging a battery, and we have this wasted solar, and that's what we're going to graph. If we don't have any solar, we're going to have to see if we have enough diesel capacity. Okay, and then I'm going to put a little bit less diesel just for one scenario here. Okay, and we so in this we look at how many remaining. Think about a cash flow waterfall. God, these things like a cash flow waterfall and a cash flow cascade and all that stuff, they're so applicable to our little dispatch. And finally, we see, well, how much diesel do we have? And if we don't have enough diesel, we have unserved energy, a classic old concept of not having enough energy and building a reserve margin into a utility company. So we do that one. And then we make our financial model. And in our financial model, we start with demand. And unlike a project finance model, you see if the demand is meeting the supply. Now, I put my little generic macros here and did a green background, and you can look at and see how to do all that stuff like this. And we'll see how much capacity we have. And once we put in the capacity, we'll take the energy from our dispatch sheet, and our dispatch sheet in this energy from the dispatch sheet is our solar profile. So we've got that one, and then we'll put in our capital expenditures, and we'll put in the different capital expenditures by group, and we'll allow those to go in different times and say, oh no, I'm used to project finance, I can't do that. Don't worry about that for 1 second. Okay, and once we have this, then I think I'm going to explain a little bit of this in another video, which will really be just about horrible, but why, how you can use concepts, and this is the other thing I'm really saying, we can use this PMT function if I'm doing real costs. We could put inflation in here very easily. That's why if you really study a couple of those videos on levelized cost of hydrogen or batteries or solar, whatever, that's why using this PMT function instead of trying to force things with a whole bunch of goal seeks and buttons and all that, you notice there's no goal seek button, there's no circular reference button, there's no nothing in here like that. Okay, and then we get our total amount of EBITDA. I'm just doing this in real terms. You can throw in inflation after that. That's totally fine. You know, just be careful that you have a real rate on the inflation. And then we can put in our fuel and standard kind of heat rate. What's the heat rate? What's the cost of fuel? And we put all of those in. And then we get to our cash flow. Now, if we in the cash flow, we have some capital expenditures that are continuing. And that depends on the lifetime of our assets. And if a little bit later, yes, I'll make a second video. I'm just doing some of the mechanics of the gimmicks. But if we change the lifetime, then it changes the timing of the replacement. And when you change the timing of the replacement, the PMT changes and everything works. And the really, really big thing is here, if I, right now, what do I have in? Let's put some more stuff in. Now, the other thing that I think is important is that when you're building a model, here, let's look. If I don't have a battery and I put a higher diesel price in, I can kind of see, that's expensive. And if I have no solar, well, then we've got 61. I'm staring at this 61 cents, and actually we have to put a little more diesel in this case, so we're being able to mess around with it, and we can finalize this and put different scenarios in. We'll put a different scenario and all that, but when you're messing around with a model, the big deal is if you put a target rate of return in, let's put a lower return in. So then we get 54 cents for our diesel, but let's take the diesel out and put solar and a battery in. Now that's going to be a very tough one to put a battery in, but we're getting a lower return. Now, if the battery has a shorter life, okay, I've got to stop the video just for a minute, I'm going to stop it. Now, I frankly don't even know where I was interrupted, but I'm this business, the business of rate of return and using the PMT function or some other present value function instead of forcing things. And importantly, down here, can I find it? Where I computed the the economic depreciation. Economic depreciation, it comes from here, and it comes from the EBITDA minus the, if we take the opening balance of our investment itself, where our investment is computed with an accumulated economic depreciation. Now, I know right now somebody's going to say, if I start going on and on about this, I'm going to get some really negative comments like I have. So I'm going to have to deal with this business of economic depreciation. But I want to tell you, if you compute the economic depreciation as the target rate of return, that's basically our IRR or cost of capital. If you use economic depreciation and you use the PMT function up here, where did we computed it for solar, battery, each with a different cost, each with a different capex, each with a different lifetime, and we computed the PMT function. If we use the PMT function and use that to derive our EBITDA, what's going to happen, and this is really, really exciting, I hope you see this, is that when we compute, finally, we go down and compute our balance sheet and cash flow and all that, and that's kind of really a little bit boring to all do. When you compute the return on invested capital, that return on invested capital is going to equal your target IRR. And I am a little embarrassed right now. I need to find my return on invested capital, and I'm not going to go and do some stupid control F. I'm gonna get it, and perhaps there is a chance that I did not compute it. Just a minute, and if I didn't compute it, if I can't compute it right now, we got some balance sheet. Aha, I think I've got it. No, I don't. Earned return. Here it is. It's the rate of return. It's divided by the equity and debt on your balance sheet. And if you are careful in using economic depreciation and the PMT function, you can do that. And then you can go even further. As this is some sort of mix behind a corporate model and a project finance model, you're going to have a terminal value because your assets, when they're all finished, are not going to be complete. I even have this in yellow because that was really the most struggle to kind of prove. And to get that final rate of return where we take the total cash flow that we're getting, EBITDA plus the terminal value minus the capex, we get that and we compute an IRR on this whole line. And please use just a regular old IRR, just a stupid minute. What just happened was really, really frustrating because I spent so much time making sure that our computed IRR and our year by year by year earned rate of return was equal to our cost of capital. And in order to do that, I had to get a terminal value, and it's not the terminal value that you compute in a standard corporate model. You're going to take asset by asset by asset and see how much lifetime is left. And it can be really tricky. And I have a whole separate, oh my gosh, it is embarrassing. I think about 1,000 lines. And then I must have a little bitty problem with this one. And I thought I had everything totally resolved, but maybe I don't. So those are some of the issues. Now, so we can, again, with this little dispatch, with a financial model, combining some ideas, using some knowledge of how solar works, a little bit of solar, you can make this model. And then you can do some interesting work on what happens to the prices if we use diesel instead. I'm not going to do that again. Now let's contrast that. Now, if you go to people have been asking about the disk, and then Google tells me there's a problem with one of the files, so I've been a little bit frustrated, and I got to make a new version. But in the chapter 5, now this is not really on the disk. Uh, Maybe I can put it on the disk. If you go to chapter 5, renewable energy, and then you go to mini grids, we can look and just see a little bit on how other people do it. And that's what, if you order this, you have to send me an email and I might bother you a whole lot. I won't bother you, I promise. And then we go to other mini grid models, and I've got a few. And let's just look at a couple of them. Let's look at this Bangladesh one, okay? I'm a little bit afraid that when I'm opening another model, it's not gonna mess me up. Okay, so this is good. Nice little thing. Solar. This is a solar mini grid. Okay, and we got a tariff, and we have to press a button to calculate that tariff. And I guess this summary results. What does this do? Oh God, I have no idea what it's doing. Oh no. Okay, maybe it's doing something. And then we have a commercial year and we have a households. That's all very good. It's still computing something or other. God knows what it's doing. Ah, it put it over here. Okay. Ah, and then we can. Who knows? Who knows? It's okay. It's okay. I shouldn't criticize. Sure that. But can you? I hope you see some of the ideas, and this is not and then down, is it still going? It's still going. Oh, shoot. I shouldn't have pressed that button. That's why you're afraid to press those buttons with copy and paste macro buttons or whatever. And there's some project IRR, after tax IRR. Basically, it's some sort of, oh God, what's going on? A poultry farm, who knows? Very fancy. Somebody's good at a macro, perhaps, and it's a project finance model. And I have to stop it. Sorry, I can't do it. I can't watch it. Okay, that's the kind of stuff you get. Somebody's very proud of this, and then we go through and, oh, look at these beautiful diagrams. Good. Yes, I'm criticizing too much. I would make those too. And then there's some sort of project finance model with some after-tax returns. But remember, this has nothing to do with project finance, where all I want to be able to do is look at different strategies, figure out how much I'm going to have to pay. I got the load profile from there, and there's that. I suppose it's air conditioning demand, and we got all of that stuff. Not bad. I'm not. That was too negative, except for the macro. I really didn't know what would happen. And then let's look at one other one, and that's the UN Development Program one. Okay. Oh, this is, I guess, 2018, so maybe it's a little bit pre-pandemic or something. And it's opening. Okay, good. And I took something. You'll see the solar thing I took. Ooh. Okay, let's not update this. And again, we have some nice things. We have. Oops, I put my little thing in there, and maybe I did a little bit of this too. I must have put a little bit of a thing in here on the titles, and there's a little summary output loads. Okay, and uh, 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 information on the diesel and the generation and the irradiation data. So it's all very good sensitivities charts, and you can look at it and see about the targets, the summary output. But again, please, this is really the biggest theme of the whole thing. I want to be able to put different strategies in, and I want to be able to see what's going on. And when I look at this, it immediately takes me to the loan tenor. Oh, who cares? Okay, yes, you care about this, but the first thing you better do is make sure the economics work. And then it gives me some USD per kilowatt hour, which is $1. Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't know why I was getting. And then and it's got all this stuff about de-risking and everything else. I think, and there's some good things. Okay, we put how the households use it, and we put kind of some information about the diesel, solar, some detail on exactly how many light bulbs and fans you use, and then there's some good thing, the generation. And I really kind of took this. We've got some values, but I took this and used the same thing in diesel and irradiation data, and I want to see the financial model for this. It must be somewhere, and why can't I find it? Maybe it's hidden in some hidden sheet or something. We better look at that. No, it's not in a hidden sheet. Okay, but they used again a project finance model really for something that's ongoing, where the lifetime matters, and where you want to make some presentations. Okay, you can go and look at this, and maybe you'll like these better anyway. And that's enough for an introduction video. I'm going to make a couple more technical ones just on how to do a little bit of the gimmicks, and I'm going to do a little more detail on the, uh, the economic depreciation and really the rate of return. And it's, for me, a very, very big subject. Why you should not be afraid to kind of get past the very basic kind of traditional rules and get into something a little more interesting. Okay, and let's stop the video for this one.